Hey, and welcome to Dirty Lazy Girl, a podcast that offers realistic girlfriend support and problem solving for imperfect people.
You don't have to be perfect to be successful. Every week, we'll give you unconventional, dirty, or lazy problem solving strategies. Let's get started. It's season 3 of the Dirty Lazy Girl podcast, and today's obstacle is choosing an accountability partner. What are the best and worst qualities they possess?
Well, we are going to define what an accountability partner actually does and how this could actually benefit you on your own weight loss journey. We're also going to break down, those qualities, the good and the bad, because those are kind of funny, and, offer some tips about what to look for when you're trying to choose like a weight loss buddy.
This is going to be so helpful, Stephanie, because especially for people like me who are social people, accountability partners are really on a key to success on any kind of weight loss or anything. So I really need an accountability partner pretty much all the time to get results. So I can't wait to get started. But first, why don't we take a quick break?
Awesome. Well, today's podcast is sponsored by the Dirty Lazy Keto 5-ingredient cookbook, where you can guess it. Every recipe is going to be designed for you with a minimum or maximum of 5 main ingredients. We want to keep this simple and easy, right? We're all about being accountable today. So I'm ready to help you out with.
So why don't we get started? But before we get too far, why don't we review the basics of what an accountability partner is?
Yeah, and I'm sure people kind of figure this one out, but just to be sure, we don't want to, leave anyone in the dark. But an accountability partner is basically an outside person or a group, basically that's going to help support you as you work toward your goal.
Right. And I picture them as providing like inspiration or guidance, like maybe directing you towards helpful books or just tips. Or
yeah,
just
they might give you some feedback, right? They might be like a resource for you that's a sounding board.
Mm-hmm. And often too, they can put things in perspective. Like sometimes they see you slipping before you do.
They're all, hello, wake up over there.
Yeah. And it could be it's support, but they could also maybe be a little tough love, like let you know you need to correct.
Yeah, I like the tough love part. That's hard to find, right? The tough love and an accountability partner, because everyone wants to be nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be a little tricky.
That is going to be tricky. So we'll have to dive into that one. Well, who can be an accountability partner? Like who? Who are these people?
Yeah. Well, I know for me, I like it to be an actual person like that I can meet with or chat on the phone or text. But that's not actually, you don't actually necessarily need an actual person, do you, Stephanie?
Yeah, an accountability person or program could actually be digital. So it could be like an online support group or using social media. Basically, you have to figure out your personality. Do you need internal accountability, external accountability? Do you want it public? Do you want it private? So there's a lot of different ways that you could find that person.
Yeah. And usually it's someone who's sharing a similar struggle to you, or maybe they've already had the struggle and overcame it, but somehow they went through it themselves. I think that's the most obvious type of person we want to look for.
Sounds like they have more experience. They're not just some person randomly.
I've never dieted.
They need to know what you're talking about.
Advice.
Yeah. It's like having a guidance counselor as you're going through college. You don't want like a guidance counselor guiding you who's never been to college. You need someone who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it could be family or close friends, but it not necessarily, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's some merits, there's some pros and cons of choosing like a spouse or a best friend versus an anonymous person or maybe even an acquaintance. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we do the pros and cons.
Because you can even also pay someone like a trainer or a life coach or a counselor.
And that's okay too. You have to figure out what kind of relationship is going to actually, give you the results that you want.
Exactly.
So now we're going to get to the meat of it, right?
I know.
I'm like, I can't wait for this part.
I know. We could talk about what are the best qualities and the worst qualities, but I think we should start with the worst.
I like the worst too. Because those are the ones that's like we've all been there and like tried to find this person that's gonna like cure us. And then it ends
Right.
up in a total disaster. At
Yeah.
least that was my experience a few times.
Yeah. Me too.
What's like
Me
the
too.
absolute worst quality, do you think, in an accountability partner, Tamara?
One that doesn't show up.
Yeah,
They're not available, or they say they are and then they don't return your calls, or you're going to meet up to go to your exercise class and they don't they have a million excuses for why. Oh, those are the worst.
those are the
The
worst. They like
worst.
ghost you, right? Like you have this person in
Yes.
mind, you and your, let's say, best friend or something. You have this big plan. You're gonna, hold each other accountable. You're starting off in this great program, and then she ghosts you.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So don't, if they have a tendency, or like I have some friends who they're really enthusiastic in the beginning, but then they
Right?
fade really
They
fast.
just totally fade, like a little
And I know
quiet
that.
star, like beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
beep.
So
You're
I
all,
have
dang
to make
it.
sure, and I like those people because sometimes they're likable, so you're attracted to them, but I have to remind myself, yeah, no, they
Yeah,
give
no.
up really fast. I need someone who shows up,
Mm-hmm.
takes
Yep.
my calls, or who, if they say they're going to meet me for whatever,
Yeah,
they
they
meet
actually
me.
follow through with it, right? Like they're present. That is
Yeah.
the worst. Well, the second one, second worst quality, Tamara, which is kind of a tricky one. Like we kind of
Mhm.
hinted at this earlier when we mentioned like a best friend or a spouse.
Mhm.
But sometimes some of these people, they take you down the dark path.
Yes.
That happens to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can have an opposite effect, right?
It can have the opposite. And it's I just want to share my own personal story with this one. And like I was recently in New Orleans and, we were there for a nice little trip. And on our last night, my husband and I, we were like, oh, we're going to be cooking in the New Orleans cooking school. And then we're going to go to bed early because we've got to get up and have a flight the next day. So we're going to, enjoy a mild meal, but then we're going to go to bed early. So guess what my spouse started to do? Can you guess? He started to take me down the dark path, Tamara. In the middle of our cooking at the cooking school, my husband, God bless him, he was starting to have some wine because everyone's cooking and drinking and having a great time. Next thing you know, the husband was like, woo, let's go out tonight. Let's go down, the dark
Yeah.
path. He didn't say that out loud, but all of a sudden he's like, let's stay up late. Let's go out. Let's go to Bourbon Street. And I'm like, oh no. Right. But it was so tempting. It was so tempting to have my accountability partner
Yeah.
at the time, where we had
Yeah.
both agreed on something. Suddenly he's got this great idea to take me out on the town where we're going to be up till 2, 3 in the morning. And then, being tired for our flight or missing our flight, which, that is not a good plan.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and sometimes I think we secretly want those people and we
Yes,
pick
we
them as
do.
account because we want to be encouraged to go down the dark path. So this is when
Right.
you kind of got to check yourself. Like if you're looking at a potential accountability person and you tend to do, the dark road with those people,
Right.
you
Down the
need to
dark
step.
path.
Yeah.
It's
I
really
think
tricky.
sometimes it's you have to give up a little bit of likability in favor of someone who's going to be there and who stays on the straight and narrow path.
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I
Yeah.
mean, I talk about this in the Dirty Lazy Keto Get Started, where I had like a eating buddy, quote unquote, like
Hmm.
at work meetings where we would always sit together at meals. And, she could always rely on me and I could rely on her that we would order whatever we wanted. And everybody else would always have like these healthy salads and whatnot. And her, she would be having like a triple cheeseburger and I'd be having my fried this and, milkshake that. But I had to break that relationship with her because she would take me down that dark path. I didn't want that kind of a friend, even though, she was my friend and coworker, but I couldn't sit with her at lunch meetings and stuff because
Yeah.
she would take me down that path.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to really be careful about that. And on a related note, and this is the one too, I get myself in trouble, is someone who doesn't want to tell me the truth because they want me to like them, or they're a people pleaser like I am.
Yeah.
And so some people who just tell you what you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
we like those people,
Love
right?
those people. Those are like your best friends, right? Your
Yeah.
sister, your mom. And they're like,
But
"Oh,
there's,
you look fabulous. You don't need to lose weight." Or,
yeah,
"You've worked so hard. Have a piece of cake for dinner. This is grandma's
yeah,
special dish. Have a second serving." Yeah.
yeah. But they, you know, they're terrible accountability partners.
Yeah, don't choose those people.
Fun
Because they'll just tell
friends,
you
just
what you want to hear, or they'll tell you something else because,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I know. It's funny in graduate school. They said your mentors and the people who help you with your dissertation aren't the best ones, aren't necessarily the most likable ones, and they're right.
Hmm.
Because the likable ones just tell you what you want to hear. Oh, your work is great. And then, then you never improve. So it applies to everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the supervisor at a job.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, most of my supervisors, the good ones, aren't really socializing with you and friends with
Mm-hmm.
you, offline. They're more
Mm-hmm.
there to be your direct supervisor and provide constructive feedback as opposed to like, being on Facebook with you or,
Yeah.
going to weekend events. I think
Yeah.
it's nice to have that, like you said, like a little bit of a barrier.
Yeah. I think so too. Because this is, I guess the lesson is accountability partners aren't necessarily your friends. They're your friend, but they're more of a mentor than a friend,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
know?
That's true.
And our next one is that a bad quality is that they're not invested in whatever it is, the diet or the healthy lifestyle. They're not invested in it themselves. It makes me think like, if you're on dirty, lazy keto, don't get someone, an accountability partner who doesn't really believe in dirty, lazy keto. You know
That
what I
would be a
mean?
bad plan because then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're trying to take you to a Weight Watcher meeting or put you on a grapefruit diet, right?
Yeah.
They're not really
It
going to
get
support you when you're like, I'm trying to eat more fat. And they're all, what? Why
right.
would you do that?
I know. Even though you're both on maybe some kind of diet, I would say make sure it's a compatible program.
Hmm.
Right? Because otherwise they're going to criticize what you eat and which you can get a lot of that with people who don't understand dirty, lazy keto.
Well, you got to find someone who's the right fit for you. And,
Yeah.
kind of like what we're saying, you want to necessarily find someone who's not telling you what you want to hear,
Mhm.
which is, it's complicated, right? Like you don't want them being
Yeah.
harsh and critical, but at the same time, you need someone who's going to be motivating to you and inspiring you.
Hmm.
It's like a very multi-layered person. They're
Yeah.
magical. It's almost like
Yeah.
a unicorn.
I know. When you find one, you got to like really hang on to one.
Yeah, for sure. Because you don't want terrible feedback, right? Like you don't want people that are mean or like rude to you or someone that's like giving you negative consequences if you go
Yeah.
off on the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
that sometimes where people say, "Oh, I asked my husband or my friend that if I gained weight, like to, have this horrible consequence where they're going to publicly humiliate me or I don't know." Does
Yeah.
that seem like that's going to be effective?
No, no. And also I think related to that, they need to know you and your personality. Like there's certain things that I know if I'm too rigid with the diet, it'll throw me off track. And if so, the person needs to know that about me, or we need to have some communication where I can say, okay, you know, keep me on track, but at the same time, if I'm getting too rigid, it's not a good consequence. So they can keep an eye out for me. So I think part of it is finding someone who knows you, and knows your style.
Yeah, and can be sensitive to that, right? And
Yeah.
kind of give you feedback based on your path or what you prefer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
What
always feel like
about
I have to find someone who's kind of at my same level as well. I know
yeah.
it can be challenging. Like, I know there was a lady in my neighborhood who, she saw me exercising a lot and losing weight. And then she wanted to um, basically schedule her workouts with mine. And she wanted me to go out with her at night. And I'm not a night person, Tamara.
Yeah.
I go to bed early and she wanted to go out and do all the stuff at night. Plus, she was just starting out. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really where I'm at in life. Like, I like to do my stuff in the morning, I like to do certain routines. So it was awkward, but I had to say no to her
Yeah.
because it wasn't the right fit. She was in a totally different place than I was.
Yeah. It's funny, I've had the opposite because I've exercised with someone who was too advanced. They were way ahead of me and I was straining and just overdoing it and it was so worried with keeping up so that one was the opposite. It just wasn't a good fit me, but for the same reason. I mean, they're just not in a similar place as that I was. I mean, sometimes, you can really commiserate with someone who's like right where you are. You'll have similar issues. I would say though, sometimes it's good to go with someone who's already been through it ahead of you. So there's pros and cons because, if they've been successful themselves, like let's say on a diet or something, then that also can be good. So I don't know, you have to be careful, not to get someone too advanced, like for exercise, but you also want someone who knows what they're doing.
It's so complicated. Well, that's why I feel like we have to kind of dive into this because I
Yeah.
often see people reaching out to others saying, oh, I want an accountability partner, or, oh, my spouse and I, that's very common. My spouse and I are going to lose weight and this is what's going to happen. But then like 2 beats later, I hear the same person say, oh, my spouse and I lost 25 pounds and we went to pancakes to celebrate. And I'm like, oh, okay. Whoa, let's talk about maybe the best qualities to look for in an accountability partner. It may not be the spouse, right? So
No.
you kind of touched on some of those qualities. I mean, what would you look for in the ideal person?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because what you shouldn't do is just go for whoever's convenient, because my husband's convenient, like to but the two of us have totally different styles. He has to follow a diet to the letter, and he needs a very strict plan, and it's just not, and it's I don't know why we do it. We've tried it like 10 times to like go on diets together. So I guess, so one of the things would be that you have compatible personality styles and a similar approach to things, which, obviously, you know, that didn't happen with my husband.
And that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
just because, like you said, the good qualities that a spouse or a best friend might be more available and they show up, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah. But and showing up too, that's another thing. We already mentioned that as a bad quality. So a good one is, they show up, they commit, they follow through.
And I really like honesty, like you said, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For example, like I've been in so many situations in restaurants where I'll order my food a certain way, right? And I'll say, I want I want broccoli and I want salmon and I want a side of Alfredo sauce, and they're looking at me like, that's weird. So then the waiter brings you your entree and it comes back with rice. And you're like, I didn't want the rice. And the waiter's like, oh, well, it's already there. Go ahead and enjoy it. It's free. Don't worry about it. And you're thinking, honey, if it's on my plate and I see the rice, I'm going to eat the rice, right? It's too tempting, or it's French fries or, pasta, whatever it is. Sometimes I think that having an accountability partner, especially when you're going out to eat, that's going to help support you so that when you have an awkward conversation to your mom, to the waiter, to whoever, and you say, look, I don't want the rice. If you could kindly take this back to the kitchen and bring it to me the way that I ordered because I am paying for this, right? Even though it's awkward, like you need that person to be there to support you when things get weird.
Yeah. So they can say, yes, Stephanie, that's good. You did
Yeah.
that.
Like even if it's just that emotional support, like that encouragement.
Yeah. That's so important. I mean, because it feels a little awkward doing that, so having that person there to just validate it is huge. And I also think another related thing is if they do that themselves. So if they're a good example,
Yeah.
so they send their food back, or,
Or
what I'm
speak up
saying? Or,
when things are uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah. Or they order, things on the side in a similar way that you do. Again, it supports you, but it's also role modeling. It's great if you can just do that together.
Yeah, you can see how tricky this is, right? Now that we're getting into it. It's like you need that person that's going to follow through, that puts time into the relationship. They're a good example. They're honest.
I
Dang,
know.
Tamara.
It's like looking for a boyfriend.
I know. It's like online dating for Dirty Lazy Keto.
Seriously. We should have an app, an accountability
Accountability partner app. Well,
right.
I do feel that way, like when it comes to having, support groups online. And this is,
I'll say, another quality is that they have a track record either in that same area, or just in general. Like there's some people who are just really good at following through. They're really good at being hardworking and honest and dedicated. So, those mean a lot. So maybe they're not exactly have the exact same goal as you, but if they're just one of those people, there are people like that, aren't there? They're just committed. I had the opposite happen when I started my boot camp. I wanted an accountability partner, and we paid a lot of money for this thing, and she went for like 2 sessions, and then she skipped one, and then she skipped another. So fine, okay, so she ended up halfway through dropping out. Then so the next sessions, they're like 6-week sessions. She's like, no, I'm gonna really be on board this time. Yeah, this time she did 2 sessions and quit, and then she did it again. I mean, and then finally she signed up, paid money, and never showed up to one class. I was like, so her track record was just horrible. And so it actually, about the second round of that, I actually then asked my sister, hey, you want to do this class with me? And just, totally gave up on her because, she was proving to me that this just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, look for a track record.
The track record is key, right? Because like I remember hearing an Oprah, Oprah. I'm about to quote you, Oprah, if you're listening. I remember Oprah one time said, "People show you who they are right away," and she said, "Believe them." And I just thought,
Yes.
for me, I hear that in my brain all the time because it's true for everything. And people will show you immediately in a relationship, even strangers, what kind of person they are. And it's up to you to decide whether or not to accept that or to like convince yourself, oh no, it was an accident. Oh no, they won't do it again. Yes, they
Yeah.
will. They're going to do it over
Yeah.
and over and over again, just like
Yeah.
your friend.
It's like I'm a person who likes to be on time, and I don't like people who are late, and they can be late one time. Everybody has a traffic whatever jam or whatever, but the second time I'm like,
Cut them loose.
okay, they're
Yep.
like they're gonna be chronically late, and they are,
Yeah, they
you
are.
know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the same thing
believe
with
it.
food. It's like online, you'll see in the social media groups, people will say, oh, it's my birthday tomorrow. I'm going to be cheating. Oh, what's my cheat day? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, if someone's doing that, guess what? They're going to be doing that constantly. And they're going to constantly try to convince themselves and you and the world, apparently, that cheating and eating a bunch of cake and whatnot is the best decision. They're not going to change. That's been my experience. People that are showing up hardcore, they're committed, they're sharing what's working for them, they're monitoring their success, they're encouraging you. Those people will continue to be awesome accountability partners forever. So
Yeah,
look at their track record, look at what they're sharing, look what they're
exactly.
talking about, look how they order in restaurants. Those are the people you want on your side.
Exactly. Okay, Stephanie, well, why don't we get into the suggestions for establishing a working relationship with an accountability partner? Like, what are the practical details of setting this thing up?
Yeah, because it's like once you find this magical person, if you don't massage and get a routine together, then it could potentially fall apart. Like, for example, setting up a predictable schedule, like where you meet at the same time every week, that's a win-win for both of you, right? Because
Yeah,
then you have something to depend on, you can focus on it, you
yeah.
know it's coming.
Yeah, I'd say some kind of check-in process, whether it's you text each other, you email, you call, but have a check-in, like, how were you this week or today, or whether it's weekly or monthly, but um, yeah, get a predictable little routine about checking in,
Right.
or sending each other your food logs or whatever, meeting for exercise, whatever the goal is.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can share that information.
Hmm.
But I think the key is to have a set time, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be 8 a.m. on Monday. It can just be Mondays or
yeah.
Fridays or whatever it is. What's our weekly
Hmm.
weigh in? Or how about at the end of every day, quote unquote, the end of every day, we text each other pictures of all the food that we ate. If
Hmm.
that works for you and that's something that schedule works for you, that could be a system where you feel accountable.
Yeah. My sister and I did this, and we did a weekly check-in
Okay.
via text. So she would say, "How was your week?" And this is like just before the weekend, like on a Friday. "How was your week?" And I'd be like, I really stuck to it, but I didn't on this. And then she would come back, and then we would just encourage each other and like, okay, how can we stick on better for next week? And actually that was super helpful. You know,
It
you can
doesn't have to
get
be like, how much do you weigh, right? It can be like an emotional check
yeah,
in or struggles or challenges. But knowing she was there for you like once a week,
yeah,
I think it helps motivate you to stay on track so that you have someone to answer to.
yeah. And some people I notice on the Facebook support group will post weekly, like, here's my week, or here's what I, ate, or here's what I did. And that for them is a way of like checking in with the whole big group.
And that's
That's
kind of
cool.
more my style, like as opposed to an
Yeah.
individual. And like in the premium Facebook support group, I run a Friday live group where every Friday at noon Pacific time, I go live. And for like a half an hour, we talk live and I present information. And knowing that every week we're going to be there to talk about things live, it keeps us accountable. And then I can ask
Mhm.
people, what were the successes this week? What are we celebrating? And people get excited and motivated and they know it's
Mhm.
coming and they want to share. So therefore, it helps as a check-in.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think too, before you dive into it, you should have a conversation about your goals to make sure you have similar goals, or each other's goals, so that there's a clarity. And that sounds obvious, but sometimes people aren't clear.
No, not at all. Like you have no idea what you're working toward. Maybe one
Yeah.
person is just wanting to eat more vegetables and the other person is just trying to drink more water. It's
Yeah.
like you got to know what each other's goal specifically is so that you know how best to communicate.
Right. Or even like how long you want this to go. Well, I want to lose so many pounds, and are you willing to stick with me, till the end, because that's my goal, to get to this end. And that way it's clear what you expect of them and what they expect of you.
Yeah, I like that. Because
Yeah.
otherwise it could just go on forever and then, it might feel kind of exhausting. Because what if things change? Like, what if the
Mhm.
texting, like you said, once a week with the sister, what if that wasn't enough for one of you? The other person
Mhm.
might say, well, I really need to have a little bit more. I would like to have more of a conversation once a week, or let's take
Yeah.
a walk together once a week and
Yeah.
share the highlights and our struggles, like more of a digesting it and conversation.
Yeah. Almost like a reevaluation of things at some point. Like, hey, is
Hmm.
this working? Should we tweak it? Do we
Yeah,
want to
like
change the way we're being accountable to each other? So that's kind of like a, not necessarily a routine check-in, but like kind of a, hey, let's just see if this is working kind of moment.
Yeah, like logistics, right? Like you
Hmm.
said, the schedule, how often, the style that you're communicating.
Yeah.
And that's okay as long as you're honest and you own up to
Yeah.
what's working for you
Yeah.
and you guys can continue to have a healthy relationship that's benefiting both partners.
Yeah. And you have to be honest if it's not working for you, or if you're cheating, or if you're, like, oh, I'm not being honest, I did cheat last week, or and to be willing to like bring that up, because it's not going to work if you can have the best accountability partner in the whole world, but if you're not being honest.
I love that advice. And
Yeah.
that scares people too. Like I get a lot of letters from folks that will go on and on about how, oh, I'm so perfect, I'm so great, everything's working great. Why did I not lose any weight last week? And I'm like, how would I know that? Like, first of all, I don't know you. I don't know what you're eating. I don't know your age, your activity level. That's not my job to monitor you. I'm not your doctor. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like out of the
Hmm.
blue. And I'm thinking, how would I even help this person? And I always say back to them, hey, I've never met you before. I appreciate that you trust me with your journey, but I may not be the best accountability partner for you because this is out of
Yeah.
the blue here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you have to know them.
You have to have that relationship and be both in it and be committed
Yeah.
and understand how often you're talking and monitoring
Yeah.
and really being honest about the information.
Yeah. It takes ongoing. It's just like, I mean, any other relationship. You just have to keep ongoing work.
Yeah,
Here's
it's
what I
not
want.
easy.
Yeah. We don't have, there's not a dirty, lazy way around this one too much, is
No,
there?
it's kind of like you have to see what's working for you and what isn't. I know one of the things that's been surprising to me is how, like, I'm more I like to use the social media. I like to get on there every single morning and like post a mini goal that I have or something, a struggle I'm having or a challenge. And I like to post that online. It keeps me accountable for the day. And I break things up into mini goals. I don't want to get on there and say, oh, I'm going to, do X by then. I'd rather say today my goal is to eat at least 5 vegetables. Which 5 are you going to eat? And then I feel motivated all day to keep on track.
Yeah.
And that's anonymous. It's like me with the world on social.
Hmm.
But that's working for me.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And that one's a little easier. But even online, you have to make sure you have the right online group as well.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't want to be posting that to my grandparents or my
No.
personal page
Or
because they're going
some
to
of
be
those,
like, who's this crazy lady?
or some of those keto support groups that are mean and policey and
Yeah.
judgy.
We don't like those people.
No.
They're
So
not our
you,
friend.
yeah. So you have to do your research even with those.
That's true.
Well, I'm curious how our listeners have been successful about finding an accountability partner. Email us at stephanie@dirtylazyketo.com or through Facebook or Instagram at Dirty Lazy Keto. If your comment is read on the air during season 3, contact Stephanie to receive a prize. Now, before we get to our final hacks, let's stop and take one quick break.
Well, Tamara, in my experience of losing 140 pounds, I did find that my motivation, over a year and a half, it waxed and waned. So even though I lost about 10 pounds a month, there were times where I struggled and I was like, what do I do next? Or, you go through a stall. So for me, finding new recipes that were delicious and yummy, especially the desserts, if I'm being honest, I needed those kinds of motivators to keep me on track and to keep me interested. So if that sounds like someone out in the audience that's listening, I want to encourage you to check out one of the Dirty Lazy Keto cookbooks. It's not just recipe books. Throughout the books, I tell a ton of stories and offer Dirty Lazy Keto tips and just whole keto lifestyle advice about how I broke through those stalls and kept my motivation going, along with the 100 low carb yummy recipes. And the newest to the Dirty Lazy Keto cookbook family, there's 4 cookbooks. This is the Dirty Lazy Keto 5 ingredient cookbook. So check it out.
Thank you, Stephanie. So let's wrap up by sharing a success story about using an accountability partner.
Well, it's funny, my accountability partner might surprise some of you listening because it's like a secret digital private person, not on social. And my favorite, most honest, reliable accountability partner for me has been the notes section of my iPhone. I've been, like Tamara said, I've been more vulnerable there where I can share private goals and private experiences. And I've been able to monitor my weight more accurately. I do feel like the scale for me, even though I hated the scale at one time, I learned to love my scale because it's honest. And it was like the one person in my life that stopped telling me, you're fine, go ahead and eat that. Or, oh, this is healthy and this is not. It was the one person who wasn't judgy to me and offering any advice. It was just a neutral party. So for my little phone and my iPhone note section, I just wrote down my weight morning and night. And I use that data to help keep me honest. So I know if my weight starts trending up, I can cut back on my number of net carbs. And if it stays the same or, just slight variation, then I'm like, oh, I'm good. So for me, those trends have been really helpful. And it's been the most reliable, immediate, helpful feedback that I've ever received on my journey.
That's great. Yeah, that wouldn't work for me because I need an actual person. Because I'll just cheat in my little notes section and pretend I have a great diet on there when I don't. So for me, that doesn't work. I feel like I've had a lot of failures with this one. Like I've had a lot of partners who either didn't show up, and I just remembered I signed up with a trainer once, and she was so strict. Like I had to take pictures of my food. I had to send her my food journals, and it was way too strict. And so I couldn't get away from her fast enough. So for me, it's been honestly a journey of kind of failures and then reset and finding a new person. And then till I finally found my sister, and we seem to really be on the same page. We want accountability, but not too much. And we can feel vulnerable around each other. So I guess the point of all this is that it takes a lot of work, and don't give up if you don't find the right person, and just expect that maybe one person's not going to work, try another. I've probably been through 4 or 5, trainers, friends, all kinds of people until I finally found something to work. And my sister may not work for some other goal. So again, I just have to be willing to do that hard work.
Well, we hope the big message today that our listeners take away with is that setting up an accountability system, even though it's complicated, it just might be the one thing that is missing from your ability to reach and maintain your health goals. Consider the pros and cons of each type of accountability partner, but choose wisely. Choose wisely and know what you're getting into with your own personality and, set up that relationship with the right pros and cons in mind.
And are you enjoying the Dirty Lazy Girl podcast? Show your support by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on YouTube, give the episode a thumbs up. leave a comment, and subscribe to the Dirty Lazy Girl Keto channel.
Well, we love reading your comments and reviews. And in fact, I have one that a listener wrote, and this is on YouTube. And so I'd like to read this. This is by Karen C. And she had just watched our episode on easy keto desserts, a keto chocolate low carb diet. This was episode number, I have to put my glasses on. It was episode number 52 of season 2. And Karen wrote, "Thank you for these yummy ideas." She says, "I love your chocolate and I love your podcast." So thank you, Karen.
Love you, Karen. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Dirty Lazy Girl podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Turn on your notifications so you'll never miss a video, and we'll see you next week.